Hi, welcome back to the workshop. Come on in.
Wheeler Dealers gave Edd China intense popularity, and it remains his most recognizable work to this day. At the height of the show, Edd seemed to have everything: global fame, admiration, and a career built on doing what he loved. But Wheeler Dealers ended years ago, and time hasn't been kind in the way many expected. The life Edd is living now looks painfully different from the success people remember. And for longtime fans, that contrast is hard to ignore. So what is really going on with Edd China? And how did a man who once appeared to be on top of the world end up here? Join us as we get into all the details. Remember Edd China before Wheeler Dealers? This is how it all started. Edward John China was born on the 9th of May, 1971, and long before television ever knew his name, cars already had his full attention. Mechanics weren't something he stumbled into later. They were baked in early. While other kids were figuring things out as they went, China was already locked in, fascinated by how machines worked and how far they could be pushed before they broke. That curiosity followed him through his education at King Edward's School, Whitley, in Surrey, and straight into London South Bank University, where he studied engineering product design. University wasn't just a stepping stone for him, it was a proving ground. And it was there that the idea which would quietly change his life took shape. The casual loafer wasn't meant to be famous. A fully drivable sofa sounds like a joke until you realize how carefully it was engineered. China built it to raise money for a Raleigh International expedition to Belize, not to launch a TV career. But once the loafer hit the road, it did something China couldn't control. It made people stop, stare, and ask questions. That sofa didn't just move, it announced him. From there, the doors didn't fling open all at once. They cracked, slowly. In 1994, China landed his first television job behind the scenes as a special effects technician on Father Ted. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. It put him inside the world of television, learning how things worked when the cameras weren't rolling. By 1998, he was no longer invisible. China appeared as a guest on Top Gear Live, driving the casual loafer around Silverstone's live arena. A sofa circling one of Britain's most iconic tracks shouldn't have worked. Somehow, it did. The absurdity pulled people in. The engineering kept them watching. That same year, the loafer took another leap when it appeared on the most outrageous Jeremy Clarkson video in the world, ever. At Thruxton Circuit, it was raced in a way that felt straight out of wacky races. Ridiculous, but deliberate. China wasn't playing the fool. He was proving that even the most ridiculous ideas could be built properly. Television took notice. The Big Breakfast brought him on 3 separate times, each appearance showcasing a different creation. The casual loafer returned, joined by the bog standard and the street sleeper. Each vehicle pushed the same idea. Cars didn't have to look right to be engineered right. Around the same period, China appeared on Scrap Heap Challenge, known in the United States as Scrapyard Wars. The episode focused on driving beds and sofa cars, placing China right where he belonged. Among scrap metal, tight deadlines, and impossible challenges, his skill set finally had a perfect stage. Then came one of television's stranger moments. On This Is Your Life, China appeared during an episode celebrating Suggs. He drove presenter Michael Aspel through old memories and delivered him to the studio in the casual loafer itself. By then, the sofa had become more than a vehicle. It was part of his identity. A year later, China stepped into a more defining role as resident designer on the BBC series Panic Mechanics. This was a shift. Less novelty, more responsibility. Around the same time, he returned to Top Gear for the feature Build a Bond Car on a Budget. Armed with a 200-pound Rover 800 and just 100 pounds more, China turned fantasy into function, adding Bond-style gadgets, including an ejection seat without breaking the budget. It was playful but precise. Every joke rested on real engineering. By 2005, China was becoming a familiar presence without ever feeling overexposed. he appeared on Ready Steady Cook for a Children in Need special, then co-hosted the short-lived Auto Trader alongside Mike Brewer, airing on Discovery Channel. The pairing worked quietly. No one yet realized how central that partnership would become. In 2007, China appeared on The Culture Show, driving Arthur Smith and other performers around the Edinburgh Festival. It was understated, almost low-key, but it fit him. He never needed the spotlight. He just needed a machine and a reason. Around the same time, he joined Classic Car Club, a Discovery Channel miniseries exploring the history and culture of classic cars. Alongside Penny Mallory, Tony Mason, and Alex Riley, China leaned into what he did best: respecting the machines, respecting the craft, speaking to people who cared about cars for reasons deeper than shine. Piece by piece, this is how Edd China's world came together. No overnight success, no manufactured persona, just years of strange ideas, solid engineering, and a man quietly carving out a place for himself. And it's that slow, careful rise that makes what happened later impossible to ignore. How Edd China became the frontman for Wheeler's Dealers. In 2003, Discovery Channel made a deliberate move. They paired Edd China with television presenter Mike Brewer to front a brand new car program called Wheeler Dealers. It wasn't meant to be flashy. It wasn't built around stunts. The idea was simple and risky. Buy a tired vehicle, fix it properly, stick to a tight budget, and show every step. No hiding mistakes. No skipping the hard parts. What followed quietly rewrote both men's careers. Wheeler Dealers didn't just work, it clicked. From the very beginning, the balance was clear. Brewer hunted down the cars, negotiating deals and chasing value. China brought them back from the edge. Grease under his fingernails, sleeves rolled up, calmly explaining not just what he was doing, but why it mattered. Viewers weren't talked down to. They weren't rushed past the details. They were invited into the process. For 15 years, China became the steady heartbeat of the show. Across 13 series, from 2003 to 2017, he wasn't just fixing cars. He was building trust. Each episode carried the same pressure. A fixed budget, real limitations, no shortcuts, no magic fixes. If something broke, China repaired it. If a part failed, he replaced it. If a car needed rethinking from the ground up, he reinvented it. Over time, that skill sharpened. You could see it in his hands, in his pacing, in the way he stayed calm when things went wrong. Most importantly, he refused to fake anything for the camera. Audiences responded because it felt real. China's enthusiasm never looked forced. His passion for vehicles of all kinds came through naturally, whether he was dealing with a modest runaround or a cherished classic. He explained mechanics in plain language, stripping away the intimidation and replacing it with understanding. Complex repairs became something viewers could actually follow, even imagine attempting themselves. That honesty became the show's signature. As the years stacked up, Wheeler Dealers grew into more than a program. It became a reference point, a benchmark. For many fans, it was the reason they picked up a spanner for the first time, the reason garages and driveways turned into weekend workshops. That influence eventually pushed China beyond the screen. Drawing directly from his experience on the show, he published Wheeler Dealers' Car Restoration Manual, aimed squarely at budding restorers who wanted to do things properly, not perfectly. By the time China stepped away in 2017, Wheeler Dealers had cemented itself as his most recognizable work. For over a decade, viewers had watched him turn worn-out cars into something worth saving, week after week, season after season. At his peak, he wasn't just a TV mechanic, he was the face of practical car restoration for an entire generation. And that's exactly why what came next hit so hard. Why Edd China walked away from Wheeler Dealers. For years, Edd China wasn't just the mechanic on Wheeler Dealers. He was the show's backbone. The calm explanations, the long, meticulous workshop sequences, the sense that nothing was being rushed, skipped, or dressed up for time. That patience was the point. Viewers tuned in because they trusted him. They trusted that what they were seeing was real. And for 13 years, that formula worked, reliably, quietly, until it didn't. After more than a decade alongside Mike Brewer, China made the decision to walk away. Not because of burnout, not because of ego, not because he wanted more attention or a different spotlight. He left because the show he had helped build was being reshaped into something he no longer recognized, and more importantly, something he could no longer stand behind. The shift began when a new production company, Velocity, took over. Their vision was different, tighter, cheaper, faster. The detailed workshop segments, the very thing that had made wheeler dealers feel grounded and honest, were suddenly being treated as a problem. They took too long to film. They cost too much. They required too much effort. In the producer's eyes, the depth that once defined the show had become an obstacle. China didn't lash out. He didn't leak frustrations to tabloids or hint at drama through interviews. Instead, he explained his position himself, calmly, through a YouTube statement. He said the producers had found wheeler dealers too difficult to make in its current format. More specifically, they wanted to reduce the in-depth coverage of his workshop repairs. The technical explanations he considered the show's unique selling point. To him, those scenes weren't filler. They weren't padding. They were the spine of the program. He acknowledged the reality behind the decision. The workshop segments were the hardest part of the show to produce. They demanded time, precision, and repetition. Cutting them down would save production effort, money, and scheduling headaches. But that compromise came at a cost he wasn't willing to accept. China explained that the corners he was being asked to cut would undermine the quality of his work and slowly erode his integrity, along with the integrity of the show itself. Faced with that choice, he concluded that the only option left was to step aside and let Velocity move forward without him. His exit opened the door for Ant Anstead, a mechanic viewers respected and liked, and someone who fit more comfortably into the streamlined format the producers wanted. The show continued. New episodes aired. The structure remained familiar, but for longtime fans, it wasn't the same show China had signed up to make, and it wasn't the one they had fallen in love with. What made the situation heavier was what wasn't said. China never blamed Brewer. He never accused him of betrayal or creative conflict. He kept his focus firmly on production changes and creative direction. Still, the departure clearly landed close to home. From the outside, it appeared Brewer took the decision personally, even though China had gone out of his way not to frame it that way. And just like that, a partnership that had defined wheeler dealers for over a decade quietly fractured. Not with a dramatic on-screen blow-up, not with accusations or shouting matches, but with a disagreement over principles. Depth versus speed, craft versus convenience. For fans, it wasn't just a cast change. It felt like the moment the heart of the show was removed, the real reason Mike and Edd never reunited. For 13 seasons, Mike Brewer and Edd China were wheeler dealers. Not just hosts, not just colleagues clocking in for a job. The balance between them defined the entire show. One found the cars, negotiated the deals, and set the stakes. The other brought those cars back from the edge, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. For viewers, it felt solid, permanent, like a partnership built to last, something that would always be there. Then, in 2017, it wasn't. The split didn't come out of nowhere. It followed a growing disagreement between China and the show's producers, one that had been simmering behind the scenes. According to China, the frustration had been building for a while. Decisions were being made to shorten episodes, streamline production, and move faster. But those changes came at a cost. To save time and money, the show began cutting back on the very thing viewers loved most: the detailed, in-depth workshop coverage, the explanations, the patience, the craft. For China, those workshop sequences weren't optional extras. They were the point. Speaking on his YouTube channel shortly after leaving, he didn't dodge the issue or soften his stance. He explained that he wasn't willing to cut corners. He laid it out plainly. The workshop jobs were the hardest part of the show to make. They demanded time, repetition, and attention to detail. Reducing their role would absolutely save production time, effort, and money, but it would also hollow out the show. From China's perspective, being asked to simplify his work compromised its quality and chipped away at his integrity. Along with the integrity of the program itself, that line, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Publicly, both men initially tried to keep things calm. The early message was controlled and restrained. There was no feud, no shouting match, no dramatic falling out, just a decision by China to move on and pursue his own projects. On the surface, it sounded clean, professional, almost boring. But behind that careful narrative, the situation was already becoming personal. 6 days after China's departure was announced, Brewer phoned him over a weekend. According to reports, Brewer explained that he, his wife, and his daughter were receiving serious online abuse in the wake of China leaving the show. The backlash was intense, emotional, misplaced. Some messages reportedly escalated to death threats. Fans were angry and confused, and many of them aimed that anger directly at Brewer, blaming him for China's exit. That phone call changed the tone of everything. China's response didn't calm the waters. While he continued to insist that production changes were the real reason for his departure, he also admitted that Brewer was not his favorite person at that moment. He acknowledged that they had disagreed over the show's future. It was the first real crack in the idea that everything between them was fine. The partnership, once presented as unshakable, suddenly looked fragile. Brewer, for his part, continued to deny that there had been any argument. He repeatedly stated that there was no feud, no explosion, no dramatic split. But he also admitted something else. He cried when China left the show. That detail mattered. It revealed just how much the partnership had meant to him and how deeply the loss landed, even if he struggled to articulate it publicly. Despite that emotion, the distance between them only grew. Years passed. According to both men, they hadn't seen each other since a meeting in a Paris hotel roughly 7 years earlier. Brewer later described that night as the last time they were together, drinking and talking before everything ended. No reconciliation followed. No quiet catch-up. No private resolution. As time went on, Brewer's tone shifted. Speaking on the road to success, he suggested that he felt used by his former co-host. He explained that throughout his life, he had often helped people build careers, and that if there was controversy surrounding China's departure, it left him feeling like a tool in that process. He insisted he wasn't bitter, but the disappointment was unmistakable. It sat just beneath the surface of his words. China, meanwhile, moved on in a very different way. He didn't chase another television format or attempt to recreate Wheeler Dealers under a new name. Instead, he built his own YouTube channel. He returned to what he had always valued most: long, detailed repair work in his garage. No producers, no time limits. No one is asking him to simplify or speed up. Just him, the cars, and the depth he believed in. Back on Wheeler Dealers, Brewer continued without him. Ant Anstead stepped in as the new co-host. The show survived. It adapted. Later, even that partnership changed, with Ant eventually handing the role over to former F1 mechanic Mark Priestley. The format continued. New faces came and went, but the original dynamic never returned. Brewer continued to insist that nothing dramatic had happened. In his words, a guy left his job. That was it. He also claimed that after leaving, China criticized the show publicly, something Brewer chose not to respond to. Still, the silence between them spoke louder than any denial ever could. In later interviews, Brewer added more context. Speaking to Car Dealer magazine, he described China as becoming increasingly disenchanted in their final year together. Long days in the workshop, especially while filming in California, wore him down. Brewer painted a picture of someone who had simply reached his limit. He stressed again that there were no arguments, no shouting, and no betrayal. China wasn't pushed out. He wasn't tricked. He wasn't cheated. He just had enough. Yet when Brewer later compared the situation to talking about a girlfriend from 7 years ago, the loss landed differently. He admitted he wished they were still friends. He said he had reached out more than once, but the calls weren't returned. For fans, that may be the hardest part to accept. Not a blow-up, not a scandal, not a dramatic on-screen fallout. Just two people who built something massive together, then quietly drifted so far apart that even reconciliation stopped feeling possible. And that silence has lingered ever since. Inside Edd China's love life, the one part of his story few talk about. For someone whose life has been defined by engines, deadlines, and television schedules, Edd China has kept the most personal part of his world deliberately low-key. Away from workshops and production crews, he built something quieter, steadier, a life that doesn't perform for the camera and doesn't explain itself to strangers. In a career shaped by constant output and public scrutiny, this part of his world moves at a different speed. Edd is married to Edd China, who is from Norway. Their relationship doesn't arrive with headlines or long interviews. It surfaces gently, almost accidentally. A photo here, a shared moment there. Instagram posts that feel unpolished and unforced. Not posed, not strategic. Just two people clearly comfortable in the same frame. There's affection, but it's quiet. The kind you notice because it isn't trying to be noticed. They were together for years before making anything official, choosing time and privacy over spectacle. No rushed announcements, no public countdown. When they did decide to formalize their relationship, they did it entirely on their own terms. An invite-only wedding in London. No press rollout, no branded moment, just close friends, family, and a decision that had clearly been settled long before anyone else knew about it. There's very little publicly known about their lives before they met. No neat timelines to map out. No past relationships to compare or dissect. And that silence doesn't feel accidental. It feels protected. What matters isn't what came before. It's what followed. The sense that they found something stable enough not to need a backstory. Something that didn't require explanation or justification. There's also very little information about children or extended family. Again, that absence speaks volumes. Edd has always drawn a firm line between what belongs to the audience and what doesn't. He's never confused visibility with access. His marriage sits firmly on the private side of that line, and it stays there without apology. What is visible is the life they share now. An adventurous rhythm, travel, time spent outdoors, laughter caught mid-moment rather than staged. Their closeness shows up not in declarations, but in posture, in the way they stand near each other, in how relaxed they look in the same space. There's no sense of performance, no need to sell an image. Imogen is often described as having a gentle heart, and that softness feels like a counterbalance to the intensity of Edd's professional world. His career demanded precision, pressure, and constant problem-solving. Deadlines, budgets, cameras, expectations. Their relationship, by contrast, appears to offer something simpler, calm, grounding, a place where he doesn't have to explain himself or prove anything. In the middle of public scrutiny, career upheaval, and creative battles, this part of Edd's life didn't fracture. It didn't get louder. It didn't spill outward. It held, quietly, steadily. And that matters, because when everything else shifted, this didn't. Remember Edd China from Wheeler Dealers? His life now is heartbreaking. There was a time when everything Edd China touched seemed to roll forward effortlessly. Ideas became machines. Machines became moments. And moments became television history. Each step felt connected, purposeful, almost inevitable. But after the spotlight dimmed and the familiar structure of Wheeler Dealers disappeared, the road ahead stopped looking smooth. What followed wasn't a clean fall or a dramatic collapse. It was something quieter, more uncomfortable. A constant need to keep moving, to keep building, to keep proving there was still fuel left in the tank. Long before the Wheeler Dealers split, China had already been trying to secure his independence, riding the momentum from his work as a special effects technician on Father Ted. He set up Comfy Banana Limited in March 1999. It was meant to be a home for his extreme creations, the sort of machines that didn't fit neatly inside traditional television formats. These weren't gimmicks, they were proof of concept. By 2001, ITV was already paying attention, interviewing him about those vehicles on Pulling Power. A few years later, in 2006, he was back on ITV again, this time on This Morning, still talking about the same wild machines, still pushing forward. The momentum looked real, but momentum doesn't always protect you. In 2009, China incorporated Grease Junkie Limited and stepped in as managing director. The brand grew outward: merchandise, e-commerce, Wheeler Dealers products, Grease Junkie gear. Fans finally had a way to own a piece of the world they'd watched for years. Alongside that, China owned an MOT and servicing garage in Bracknell, Berkshire, also called Grease Junkie. On paper, it looked solid, structured, sustainable. In reality, it wasn't. In August 2016, the garage was voluntarily liquidated. No scandal, no headlines, no explanation tour. Just another quiet ending that passed without ceremony. After leaving Wheeler Dealers, China leaned harder into digital independence. On May 1, 2018, he premiered Edd China's Garage Revival on his YouTube channel. It wasn't just a new show, it was a line in the sand. No producers cutting runtimes, no executives simplifying content, no pressure to hurry along, just Edd, the workshop, and the work. He began uploading more regularly, documenting his post-Wheeler Dealers life and reconnecting directly with fans through his Ask Edd series. In April 2021, he launched Edd China's Workshop Diaries, pulling viewers deeper into his personal projects and day-to-day reality. The depth returned, the control returned, but still, YouTube views don't replace network stability. Alongside content creation, China leaned on credentials that had always set him apart. He holds multiple Guinness World Records titles, including the fastest toilet, bed, milk float, and the largest motorized shopping trolley. He even held the fastest shed record between 2011 and 2017 before it was beaten. These records weren't vanity projects. They were proof that the creativity never left, that the instinct to push boundaries was still alive. Those attempts brought television appearances on shows like Fifth Gear, Pulling Power, and This Morning, especially around 2007, when his record runs briefly became a spectacle of their own. In 2012, he partnered with BTCC driver Tom Onslow Cole for an eBay-sponsored challenge, converting a milk float into a drag racer. The result went on to break another Guinness World Record as the world's fastest milk float. The ingenuity was still there, the hunger too, but the context had changed. These moments no longer fed into a stable television machine. They stood on their own. After leaving Wheeler Dealers, China also signed with Leeds-based Pure Agency to manage his Garage Junkie brand, e-commerce platform, video output, and public image. It was survival as much as strategy. He later partnered with lubrication brand XCP, a practical collaboration that quietly underlined a harder truth. When the regular paychecks stop, you adapt, or you disappear. Most recently, China returned to what he's always done best, chasing the edge. At the Coniston Powerboat Records Week, he set 2 new amphibious speed records. Driving the quadski, he hit 48.51 miles per hour, then followed it with another class record of 39.60 miles per hour in the Humdinga. Standing among fellow competitors, he spoke about the camaraderie of the event and how everyone wanted each other to succeed. No rivalry, no ego, just shared respect. And that moment says everything. Edd China is still building, still racing, still smiling, but the safety net is gone. The machinery keeps moving because he keeps pushing it, day after day, project after project. Not because the industry is waiting with open arms. And that's where the heartbreak really lives. Were you ever a fan of Wheeler Dealers? And do you think Edd China did the right thing by walking away? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.